everyone. I'm John Evans, and welcome to another episode of One on One. Briana Venskus has landed roles in some pretty popular television shows. The Walking Dead, Grace and Frankie, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, and Good Trouble are just a few of them. Her next role is going to be as Queen Azalea in the 2019 North Carolina Azalea Festival right here in her hometown of Wilmington. Now, the festival has decades of tradition, and with Briana being the first openly bisexual woman to wear the crown, it's also going to break new ground for the LGBT community. Well, Briana Venskus, native of Wilmington, North Carolina, actress, advocate, and overall lover of hats, welcome to the One on One with John Evans podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Take me back to where you were and your reaction to when they asked you to be the Azalea Festival for Azalea Festival Queen 2019.
Well, I was actually, believe it or not, I had just landed in Wilmington to go visit my parents, and I had gotten a call from my manager, and he was like, "You'll never believe we just," my manager is also from Wilmington, which is a small world. He was like, "You'll never believe we just got an offer for you to be the queen for the Azalea Festival." And I was like, "Oh, that's so weird. I'm literally in Wilmington right now." I remember I grew up at the Azalea Festival. Obviously, I went to the parades. I went to all the street fairs. So I have this sort of image of it in my mind as, you know, it's the event of the year. It's the Azalea Festival. And so to be asked to be the queen of it nonetheless was a bit of a shock, and I would say absolutely daunting, to say the least, because, you know, it's such an event and it means so much to so many people. So I was definitely pleasantly daunted by the proposition to be the queen.
Now, your family moved from Wilmington when you were at a young age. How did you come to know the Azalea Festival?
We've always gone back to Wilmington pretty much every year. I've spent every single summer vacationing in Wrightsville Beach. So even though we moved out from a very young age, we've spent, you know, a month there every single year, either vacationing or visiting friends or relatives. So I've virtually been there. I mean, it seems weird to even think that I moved away because it's such a staple of me growing up and of my childhood. So we also, you know, they lived in downtown Wilmington. I was born in Cape Fear Hospital. We vacationed every summer at Wrightsville or Sunset Beach or Carolina Beach. We always went to the aquarium. That was like my favorite thing to do, was to go to the aquarium in Carolina. So it's always just been such a staple. And I think, you know, we lucked out to be able to go back when the Azalea Festival was happening, and it became a routine in that sense, and very much so a tradition in that sense.
When did you get the acting bug, Briana? I know you graduated from the North Carolina School of the Arts, but were you a performer as a child in the house? Were you going around entertaining people when you were growing up as a toddler or an elementary school child?
You know, my mom and my dad have some ridiculous stories of me bouncing around the house as a young kid. And, you know, I don't remember them. I do always kind of remember dancing around and just sort of being vibrant in that respect. But honestly, I think my biggest influence, I was obsessed with Robin Williams as a kid. I thought he was the coolest guy, and I just thought he was so funny, and I thought that his physicality was just so wonderful. Between him and Jim Carrey, like, I grew up with these idols of these men who were just so physically engaged and had such empathy behind the characters that they did. And I think watching that, there was just something to it that I connected, and I think that from 5 or 6 on, I really was just like, oh, that's my thing. That's what I'm gonna do. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people giggle. I want to communicate in that way with my message and my body and what I have. So, did
you do some theater and stuff of that nature before you went away to the California Institute of the Arts?
Yeah. I was always involved, obviously, in school theater. I did a lot of community theater stuff. I never really had any big parts in community theater, but I was always behind the scenes or painting scenery, kind of getting that aspect of it. But in theater, I mean, you know, I went to Page for a little bit. I went to Weaver for a little bit in Greensboro. And both of those places have great theater programs. And that kind of was really the schooling that propelled me forward. I had a really great teacher over at Weaver that told me about the School of the Arts program. And he said, you know, if this is something that you really want to pursue, you should check them out. So I got the application online, submitted it, and, you know, one thing led to the next.
And that's what I was going to ask you. You know, oftentimes when young people have dreams, there is someone who helped make that dream come true. Who's the person for you?
Dan Seaman. He was the theater teacher at Weaver. I think he moved on to Guilford College to teach for a while, and he's now retired. But he was my theater teacher at Weaver for I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I immediately transferred to Weaver to do the theater program. And he's just one of those rare light bulbs in your life that sort of told you it was okay to be who you wanted to be and to be creative. And I absolutely, cannot thank him enough for being that little spark on the fire and saying, you know what, if it's something you want, do it. So it was an invaluable relationship and an invaluable experience to be able to be in his classes, for sure.
I see that you're getting a little emotional talking about him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's just that it's that time in your life in general. I was actually just talking to somebody about this recently. It's being a middle schooler and a high schooler is such a tricky time to begin with in terms of figuring out, do I pursue what I want? Do I pursue what my parents want? What's my purpose? Where am I headed? Like school, job. There's so many factors that play into that time in your life. And I think when you have someone who can inspire you and who can support you, I think it's such a crucial relationship. And I think that we need more of those. So.
It really is cool. I've known you all now for all of 7 or 8 minutes, but it's cool. It's cool that you're getting emotional talking about someone who meant so much to your life, because that a lot of people, when the past is past, they don't circle back around and thank those people. But I see right here that it really means a lot to you.
Yeah, I think, not that North Carolina is, not on the map, but, growing up in a place that is not necessarily known for its theater programs or its art, in a large scale as, a place like New York or Chicago or LA, to have somebody who is so supportive and really just wanted you to express yourself in the way that meant something to you. It's just so wonderful to know that even in the smallest town, in the smallest place, you can have someone who can help inspire and propel your dreams forward. So I think that's so unique and so special. And I know that there are hundreds of teachers all across the country right now who are doing that for their students. So keep up the good work, because it works.
Yeah, it does. Are you reminded by your mother that you wrote her a check for $1 billion when you were 7 or 8 years old?
All the time. All the time. Every time I go home, every time I'm on a show, she's like, we're getting closer. We're getting closer to that check. One day, Mom, I'm telling you, one day it's going to happen.
And where did that come from? It's a great story.
Yeah, I mean, I was a very vibrant child, and I had lots of dreams. And I think, they got me one of those little kids checking books when you open your first checking account as a kid, and they give you the fake checks. And so I pulled one of my checks out, and I just, I'd probably just watched some movie, and I was like really amped up on it, and I was like, I'm going to write you this check and one day you're going to cash it. And, I'm still trying to make it happen.
That's awesome, though, that she still has it. And
still she
does,
I know. She still shows it to me. That's the best part.
Mid-30s now, and as a mature young lady, how proud are you of being able to make your parents proud? We all get to a point in our lives where we say, I really wanted to do well for my parents. Mm-hmm. Are you proud to make them proud of what you've become?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as funny as it is, I mean, obviously being on TV is a great thing, and especially coming from, a place where Hollywood isn't necessarily the status quo. Being crowned for the Azalea Festival has been so cool for my parents. It's like my mom is over the moon. All of her friends are so ecstatic. And I think it's just neat that, I don't know, there's just something, parents put in so much time and so much effort to making sure that their kids have the best life possible. And they have absolutely been my number one cheerleaders throughout the years. So to be able to even get to a point where they can see that other people are acknowledging and celebrating the accomplishments that I've been able to have, which they are a huge part of, and they know that they are. It's just so cool. And yes, like to see them smile and to see them have a good time and just know that it was all for something is really wonderful.
When you got out to LA and you started to develop your career, whether it was working in production or you're starting to get some of the appearances, whether it be Walk Hard or whether it be on House, what did you learn throughout the way that maybe you tucked in that pouch of yours that I know you carry around everywhere?
Yeah.
What did you put in there that you learned, that you pulled out later? I imagine it's probably a land of a million lessons along the way, isn't it?
Oh, so many. Honestly, I would say the biggest lesson I learned is to respect every person from top to bottom on the call sheet. So the call sheet basically is filled with every person who works on the show for that day or for that series. I've worked in almost every position, from a production assistant in the office to on set to being an actor to being in a production sort of producer's role. It's every person matters and every person has feelings and is really trying to do a good job at their specific title. And I think the thing I took away from it is that you have to show up to work every day and bring absolutely 110%, if not more than that. Respect the people around you, acknowledge that they're here just like you are to pursue the same goals that you have, and to just really understand that it's a group effort and that no one person is more important than the other. It's really a team activity to make television and film happen. And I think some people forget that, and it kind of becomes more about the actors or the stars, but it really is every person involved from top to bottom.
I remember the first time many, many years ago when I first got my first opportunity to anchor a weekend sportscast. I'm, young 20s, got out of school. I was an intern, and I finally got that opportunity, and I walked off that day. It wasn't a great, I mean, if I look at the tape now, I'm embarrassed by it. But you get that first opportunity, and then you're doing what you want. Can you take me back to that first time you saw yourself on screen and the mindset, and that did you walk off and go, yes, that's me, that's where I want to be?
Oh my goodness. The first thing that I actually saw myself on television was on House, which was on Fox at the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was House. It was like a critically acclaimed show. It was an incredible cast. I remember turning on Fox and seeing my face pop up, and it was almost this moment of just being like, that's, how am I there if I'm here? But then, I mean, it's something that you study for and train for, and are, you're in the world, so it's going to happen. But it's such a surreal moment to actually see years and years and years and years of your hard work finally pay off. Countless auditions, meeting hundreds and hundreds of people, going to countless meetings, putting in the work, barely getting sleep, waking up to pay your bills just to be able to go out and maybe audition for something. So to kind of have that accumulation, even for just that first role, as small as it was, to have it actually pay off and have it actually happen was just a surreal thing to witness.
You're very strong-willed. I can tell that already. Did you ever come maybe this close to just saying, done?
Oh my God, yeah, every day.
Really?
If I have to be honest, I mean, this business is not for the faint of heart. You, as a creative person, I think it's even harder because you really do pour your heart and soul into everything that you do. And your creativity is so personal. That even if I go in for an audition, I'm giving 100% of what I would give to that character on a show. Mm-hmm. So to do that for an audition and then get rejected, you're just, you kind of wake up the next day and you're like, okay, if this is really what I want to do, then I gotta man up and understand that I'm going to have to put up with this on a maybe daily basis. So you have to be stubborn, yes. But I think the more you question whether or not you want something, it really solidifies whether or not you want it.
Okay, I'm going to take you back. Again, personal story aside here. This is about you, but just sharing something. Yeah. I'm right there with you. Yeah. I'm here. I get in Wilmington. I'm anchoring the newscast. And the Andy Griffith used to star on a show, Matlock, here in town.
Yep.
They did a Matlock spinoff, and I was called to do one of those anchor things, people talking in the back and doing the news.
Yeah.
So there was a spinoff that was supposed to star George Papard. Remember him, the old salt and pepper actor? So I went in and read for this thing, and I called my mom and dad back in Pennsylvania, read for it. They said, okay, great. I said, Mom, Dad, I'm going to be in this show. It's a spinoff of Matlock. You got to watch it this Thursday night, 9 o'clock, right after Matlock. I'm going to be on the TV delivering some news. They watched it, and I turned on, and it was somebody else.
Oh.
They got it.
Oh.
Apparently, I don't know what happened, but I mean, you talk about wanting to crawl into a trash can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't imagine it. Things like that have happened to you countless times. I imagine, though, there's just that high and then the low, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's been some times where I've gotten cast on a show and I've had these incredible scenes with emotion and connection, and I'm really proud of the work that I've done. And then I turn on the episode and it's been cut completely.
Yeah.
And it may not be because it wasn't good, but it could have been cut for time. It could have been cut for story editing. It's the price you pay to be in the world, for sure.
Yeah, I know. I felt like I didn't even make a Matlock spinoff. That was the last thing I got a chance to read. And so I did it on the small screen from then on. You've had the opportunity to work with some really pretty cool people. Hugh Lowry from on House, Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin on Grace and Frankie.
Legends.
Do you pick things up by osmosis being around them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would love to think that every person I brush up against in a professional setting somehow influences or has an impact on me. And I think for the most part, especially from Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, those two women are so professional and are so insanely good at their jobs, just in terms of showing up, knowing their lines, getting everything done in a quick manner, having respect for the crew and respect for the talent. It just goes to show you that when you do things the right way, it really does make a difference, especially in film and TV. And I think being kind and being a professional are hands down the two biggest tools that you can have working in this industry. And I think Jane Fonda and both Lily emulated that in a way that I can't even describe with words, because it was just such an experience to show up. And I mean, even on The Walking Dead, honestly, too, that show has so many cast members. They are all so insanely sweet. They are so welcoming. They make you feel like you're part of the family right out the gate. I mean, anyone who's seen the show knows how taxing it can be, even just to watch it. You're
Yeah.
like running through the woods, you're tumbling down hills, you're fighting zombies. It's a very grueling show to not only watch, but to be a part of. And I think the only way to get something of that scale done in the manner in which it does is to have good people doing great work and having respect for each other. And I think those three things tied in have made every experience that I've been on TV just above the moon.
And are most people nice, though? Are the ones that are, I'm going to use the term, stuck up or think they're above everybody else? Are they the rarity in those you've come across with?
In my experience, absolutely. The people who think that they are, maybe a level above the rest have been few and far between on every show that I've been on. And that's not to say that they're not out there, because I know they are. And I've definitely encountered some of them in other settings, not as an actor, as a production assistant. But I know they're there. But I think for the most part, we've really come into a time in the industry where people realize just how hard it is to get a job and how lucky we all are to be storytellers and to be in the industry that we are. And so I think there's a respect for it. And I think that, for the most part, everyone really acknowledges and holds that very high on the list of things to be respectful of and to really appreciate.
Were you a fan of The Walking Dead before you got the job on that show?
I was. I thought the first season of that show was one of the best seasons of television ever. I had watched that season, I'd say probably 4 or 5 times, and it was so different. I think that was what I really loved about it. It was just unlike anything I'd ever seen on television before. And so that kind of had me hooked from there. And then when I got the call, I had auditioned for that show 4 or 5 times before I actually got cast on it. Yeah. And so when I finally got the call that I was cast, I was just like, really? What am I? Did I really get cast this time? And I did. And, I lucked out that I got such a great little part. And, I've been able to kind of hold on for a few seasons now, which is great.
Whose fans are more rabid, I guess is the term I want to use? The Marvel comics, the DC comics, or The Walking Dead? Because you've encountered them all, and you're in all 3 of those universes.
Oh, goodness. They're all so ferocious in the best way possible. I mean, the Walking Dead fans, I would say, have the best concept of family. There's an air about Walking Dead fans where no matter whose side you're on, the saviors or Hilltop or this, the good guys, the bad guys, there's just such a respect for the culture of the show. And I think everyone just really understands that even though it is just a TV show, it really has become this place where, the outcasts and people can kind of come together and say, we all love this one thing, let's support it and have a good time and really dive into it and sort of live, eat, and breathe it, which is wonderful. So I think the idea of the family for The Walking Dead is really strong. In terms of DC and Marvel, they're such intense histories behind the two of them.
Yeah.
I would definitely say DC has some strong support, but I have found that the Marvel fans are so hands-on and so gung-ho. I mean, the feedback I've gotten from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from my character on that show is just so insanely cool, as well as my character on Supergirl. But I don't know, Marvel fans they're really something special, I gotta say. Okay,
well, I in doing research for you, I came across an autographed card for Briana Venskus as Agent Vasquez from season 1 of Supergirl on eBay.
Yeah.
$30.19.
Oh, wow. That's what I'm going for these days.
Brand new. Man, you're up there in the high rent district.
I know. They'll put the money behind it.
Yeah. I want to, and if you don't want to talk about this, I understand. For those of us who don't know, How liberating was it for you in 2015 to come out and tell everybody about your sexuality?
You know, it's a very simple feeling, but it's definitely a very clear one. I think there's this sort of moment before where you are who you are, and you're living your life the way you are. And then there's this moment after you've acknowledged as part of you and you're sort of unapologetic about it. And I think sort of flipping that switch and just opening yourself up to the world takes off so much weight and so much pressure. And I think there's something really unique about it. I mean, my parents were always very supportive. There was never any issue from my home front. But I think just sort of publicly acknowledging it, you know, I chose to be in a very visible industry, so obviously it's going to be a little bit more of a topic than anything else. But I just think it's great. It lifted a weight off of me of where I never had to think about the way I said something anymore. I never had to think about, you know, am I going to spill the beans in the wrong way, or is this person not going to like it? When you just sort of commit to the idea that I'm just going to be who I am and I'm going to say it and it's just going to be out there, it's just so freeing in a sense. And you know, so many people say that it was just like such a freeing experience to have that moment, but it really is. I mean, even for someone who lived as very authentically as I did prior to making, you know, any sort of announcement about it,
right.
After the fact, it just made it so much easier to not have to worry about it.
I get the sense here from you that you're having to be so careful, and then all of a sudden, here's me, take it or leave it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was very much so doing that, I think, in my personal life. But then when you add in this professional aspect of it, and I think kind of doing the more public aspect of the career I've chosen, that weight and having that weight lifted off of it was so beneficial. And it's really freed me up to, you know, all that brain power I was using to try and hide something is now being used for creativity, for energy, for projects that I actually need the energy, as opposed to just like trying to cover something up. So
you've become an advocate. You're out front. And is that something you went, okay, I'll sign advocate number 31, or you just basically, again, with your career, that fell right on your shoulders? Yeah,
I mean, I think regardless of my career, I would have been an advocate in a private sense, regardless. I think personally, you know, I'm always out hitting the pavement, you know, signing petitions, making sure that voices are heard. But I think just because of where I am and what I do, kind of carrying that weight, there's a way to be in my position and not have that be part of your persona. But, you know, I don't see the point of being a public figure if you're not using it for good, in my opinion. And so if I've chosen to be in the public eye, I think I need to use even a little bit of that for the betterment of our society and of the country. And so I'm more than happy to bear that weight and to kind of spread any message that I can stand behind.
Still angry about not getting that role when you weren't
not authentically gay enough? Yes.
Does that still get you angry?
You know, it's not so much that it gets me angry anymore. There was like that initial shock of just like, are you kidding me? Like, what? But I think now I've kind of been able to shift that initial reaction into focusing it towards the better and really trying to communicate, like, there is no formula or checklist of what anyone should look like, straight, gay, any ethnicity, any color, any shape, any size. The fact that we have this sort of box that we need to click to be able to make someone authentically whatever is baffling to me. And so I've kind of focused that energy towards really promoting the fact that anyone can be anything. And just because you look a certain way doesn't mean you're not interested in certain topics or certain religions or certain, you know, ethical preferences. So I think just breaking the mold. We're all about breaking the molds these days and really expanding horizons on what people shouldn't be perceived to, or be allowed to do certain things just because of the way they look. Like, it should open up to everyone and anything. And I think the sooner we get that across, the more fun people are going to start having in their lives.
Knowing Wilmington and the Azalea Festival, knowing the history, and then were you surprised or angry at maybe some of the reaction that one Instagram post you got received? You know, I have to ask you about this because I think it's something
I know.
You were head first and you responded to it, but how did that hit you when you had some of that pushback?
I mean, As a person, I think obviously, it's a little bit of a prick just because I am a person and I have feelings. But there are hundreds of thousands of, millions of billions of people in the world. You're not going to make every single one of them happy. It's just not going to happen, no matter who you are. And I think kind of I accepted that early on in my career. And I think the more I've sort of clung to that ideology, the better. I definitely think their opinions are valid. I don't want to tell any of them that they're wrong because they're not. It's their opinion. It's their point of view, and they are 100% entitled to have that. But I also think there's room to highlight the fact that while they may have found a particular post featuring a particular finger, that they also did overlook plenty of other posts where I had peace signs, where I was celebrating my family, where I was celebrating my friends, where I was standing up for people who didn't have a voice. So to pass over so much good to focus and hone in on one negative was I think the most, I think that was the most upsetting part of it was to think that all the good that could be done was being overshadowed by one particular thing. And I definitely know that I'm not the obvious choice for the Queen of the Azalea Festival. It's a little bit off the beaten path. I understand. But I think that that's also a testament to Wilmington and the growth and the change in North Carolina, putting the foot forward and saying, you know what, the South is made up of so many different people. And yes, the tradition is alive. And yes, we're going to honor that tradition. But we're also going to put a new face on it and see what happens.
When did you develop your love for hats? Every picture I see you and you've got a different hat on. And that's the one you're wearing right now. The one you're wearing right now is the one you have in your backpack that you carry everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. It's true. It's true. I've always loved hats. But you can ask, like, my parents, ever since I was a kid, I always had something on my head. And I don't know why. I think it's just it's a way to express yourself without having to have like a big logo on your shirt or this or that. And they're cool. They're classic.
And you love it. And you're a big fan of AirPods too.
Yes, a huge fan. Well, it makes the sound quality better, Yeah,
it does. I'm a fan of those too. I listened to an interview you did on something called Her Story, and you said,
yes.
quote, "I just love that you could be on TV and look like an idiot."
Yes, absolutely. I think there's this idea. The golden age of television was that it was sort of this elitist, platform. And in order to be on TV, you had to meet all this criteria. And I think the more that we celebrate people getting on TV and just being themselves, and I like to be a goofball. I absolutely am just a mess sometimes. And I don't mind it. Like, I like to laugh. I like to crack up. I like to do silly things. And I think the more we show that and the more we show that that's what people do, the better. I'm in no way an advocate for, I don't mind reality TV, but I think that's taking it a bit too far in terms of being, an idiot in that sense. But I think the more you can show yourself being who you are on a daily basis and taking away that air of mystery and that air of untouchable quality, and the more we sort of humanize each other and show that I laugh at the same stuff everybody else does, and we have that in common. I think that's what's important. And yeah, I love to be an idiot on TV. I think it's great. And as much as there is backlash on Instagram for, having it available for everyone to see, I also think there's something really great in that. And I think it's such a platform to be accessible to people who might not get to know you or get to meet you in person, and for them to get a taste of who you are and for them to really connect with you in a way they weren't able to before.
What will we see you in next?
Well, I'm currently in Good Trouble, which is airing right now on Freeform. And then the next season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comes out in May, which I will be on that. And I do believe I was in the movie, it was called Departures, but now it's called Then Came You, with Ken Jeong, who's also a North Carolina native. That was released online. So that should be coming out on a more widespread platform relatively soon. So just chugging along, same projects, just keeping up with them, which is awesome. I'm so grateful for those jobs, and I'm on that audition grind, trying to get the next one.
What makes it a good day for Briana Venskus?
Oh man, waking up. That's always nice.
That's honestly, a good first start. Yeah, but what makes it a good day?
Start.
If you can lay your head down on the pillow at the end of the day, what makes it a good day?
I would say if I spend at least 30% of the day laughing or smiling, at maybe another portion of the day really critically thinking about my career and the things I've done and how I can better my career and better myself personally and fulfill my goals. And then also just spending time. I mean, I love sitting around with my dog and, watching a good show and having a drink at the end of the day and just being grateful for the things that I've been given, which is a lot. I'm so lucky in so many ways to have the home that I do and to have the friends that I do. And so I think if I can at least celebrate some portion of that throughout the day, it's a good day.
You've been very kind to let us peek behind the curtains of Briana Venskus, and you are going to have to take that hat off when they put the Azalea Queen's
I know.
Crown on there.
I've been struggling with it, but it's going to be okay. I'm going to make it.
All right, Briana. Wilmington is awfully proud of everything that you have done, and this has been a whole lot of fun for me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been so great. I'm so glad we got to make it work. I can't wait to get back home and meet everybody in person. So.
See you at Azalea Festival.
Yes, absolutely.
Many thanks to Briana Venskus for joining us for this week's podcast. Make sure you say hello when she's crowned the Queen of the 2019 Azalea Festival. And don't forget those upcoming episodes of her shows like Good Trouble and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and The Walking Dead. And if you're on social media, she's a great follow on Instagram and on Twitter. Before we go, I'd like to ask you again to please subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app that you use, and leave us a rating or a review if you would. That'll help us with our listings and help us bring in even more listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of One-on-One.